Agatha felt a shiver down her spine as the mysterious man whispered urgently, "Follow this bush path and run straight. Never look back until you reach the major road. Go!" With a heart pounding like a drum, Agatha darted along the path. Her feet barely touching the ground, she didn't dare glance back, focusing only on the instruction echoing in her mind. Finally, she burst out of the dense foliage and onto the major road. Breathless, she waved down the first bike she saw and hurriedly gave the driver her home address. When she arrived at her house, her husband, startled and relieved to see her, rushed to her side, but before he could say a word, Agatha fainted in his arms. Agatha and her husband Bola lived a contented life as civil servants, raising their 2 sons. However, one day, an ordinary trip to the market turned into a nightmare for Agatha. She had boarded a bus with 5 other passengers, 2 women and 3 men. As she sat down, an overwhelming drowsiness took over her. Fighting sleep, she informed the driver of her destination, hoping she wouldn't be taken too far. When she awoke, she was in a dim, cold warehouse. She realized with horror that her hands and feet were tied. Around her, other captives sobbed, prayed, and trembled in fear. The main door was securely locked, and Agatha's confusion only grew. Suddenly, the door creaked open. 2 armed men entered, followed by 2 brawny men who dragged one of the captives away. Agatha noticed a terrifying pattern. Those taken out never returned. Instead, new unconscious victims were brought in and bound. Understanding the grave danger she was in, Agatha prayed with fervent desperation. Exhaustion overtook her, and she fell into a troubled sleep. In her dream, a man in a white robe appeared, advising her to claim she smokes if ever asked. Awakening, suddenly she found herself being hauled to a room resembling a crude surgery. She was forced into a chair, and one of the men asked her if she smokes. Heart racing, she recalled the dream and declared, "Yes, I smoke." The weight of her words hung in the air as she stared into their eyes, praying that the dream's guidance would save her. The man slapped her hard across the face. Turning to the men who had dragged her in, he declared her useless and ordered them to dump her in the butchery. Terrified and confused, she was led to a separate room where she saw others lying and sitting helplessly. Cordially, she watched as they tied her hands and gagged her, just like the others. Hopeful in the darkest of times, she kept praying that God will deliver her from this nightmare. Meanwhile, back home, it had been 2 agonizing days since her husband Bola and her children had last seen her. Their worry grew with each passing hour. They reported her disappearance to the police, posted announcements on social media, and informed their church community. Friends and relatives joined them in fasting and prayer vigil, asking for divine intervention to bring her back safely. As Agatha sat there, bound and praying, tears streaking her face, exhaustion overcame her, and she drifted off to sleep. She was awoken by a gentle tap. Opening her eyes in fear, she saw a man, finger pressed to his lips, signaling for silence. She looked around and realized that she was the only one awake. The man swiftly untied her and gestured for her to follow him. With a racing heart, she obeyed, trailing him through a long, silent corridor to an outer door and then to a gate. Once the gate was opened,
He
to
pointed
a desolate bushy path and whispered that she should run and never look back until she reached the main road. Trembling with fear, she did as he instructed, running as fast as she could. When she finally reached the main road, her eyes frantically scanned for help. She flagged down the first bike she saw, quickly giving the rider her home address. She wondered if she was still within her town as they sped away. The bike rider, familiar with the address, took her straight to her home. As she opened the gate, the first person she saw was her husband. Weak and exhausted from not eating for 2 days, she collapsed into his arms. Overwhelmed with mixed emotions, her husband immediately paid the bikeman and rushed her to the hospital, where she was resuscitated and slowly began the process of recovery. When she regained her strength, she was ready to tell her harrowing story. As she recounted her harrowing ordeal to her family, they marveled at the miraculous escape she had made. They thanked God for answering their prayers and bringing her back to them safely. The community rejoiced at her return, celebrating with prayers and thanksgiving. Alright everyone, hope you learned something from this story. Please subscribe, like and share. See you in my next video. Have a lovely day.